Brought to you by the EveryDollar app. Start budgeting for free today.
There's been so many different narratives going around. Well, maybe the government will come, forgive them. Maybe that'll be the way out. Maybe some legislation will be passed and there'll be caps put in place. Maybe they should stop making the loans altogether. And so there's a lot of thought and a lot of different opinions about this. But Yahoo Finance published an article that said the U.S. government's biggest financial asset, John, is student loan debt. I'm going to say that again. The U.S. government's biggest financial asset is student loan debt. And I mean big time, like over 1.1 trillion. It says the value of federally backed student loans held by the government has risen by more than 1,000% since the last recession and now tops at 1.1 trillion. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can look at this graph here. Student loans make up 45%. 45%. It says we hear a lot about government debt, but what we don't hear about are government assets. And so we're looking at this, and the Federal Reserve's financial account data found that the student loans make up the largest financial asset held by the federal government by a huge margin. So I say all that to say, if we're waiting around for the government to do something in the way of maybe not making loans, maybe forgiving your loans, anything that's going to cause this to not be an asset, I think that we're going to be waiting until the cows come home is basically what I'm saying. Hell's basically going to have to freeze over before that takes place. And I'm saying that because I want to light a fear under people's butt right now. A fire and a fear to go, hey, I can't just be willy-nilly about this. Like, I can't lollygag with my student loans any longer. I've got to come up with a plan to pay them off because...
Hold on a second. Before we transition to that, I want to make sure everybody knows what you just said. Because you used a fancy finance word called asset, and I may not have known what that was.
Yes.
What we're saying is, or what that report is saying is, the U.S. government's emergency fund is your student loan payment.
Yeah.
The U.S. government, what was it, 40% was...
45%.
Put that against, throw that graph back up there.
Yeah.
Against how much cash it has.
Yeah, this is, so to put in perspective, total mortgages, like when you have a mortgage through the federal government, 4.6%. If we have the currency, checkable deposits and currency, 11.1%.
So cash.
Yeah. Other loans and advances. So miscellaneous loans and advances, 7.7%.
And the government will make loans to other countries to help them out with, food shortages, things like that.
Yep.
But
taxes,
45%.
Taxes receivable, 16.4%.
Student loans, 45%.
Woo!
So what we're saying is almost 50% of the business of the U.S. government, the cash that runs the machine that is your roads, that is your FBI, that is your government, that pays the salaries of your congressmen and women, is student loan repayment.
Yeah.
It will not go away because it's the half of the economic engine.
If that goes away...
Or it's not half the economic engine, it's half the assets. Yeah, that's a mess.
That's
a
mess.
That is a scary, scary place to be.
So I say that to set the stage for this idea. If you're waiting for these to go away, they're not going anywhere. And not only are they not going anywhere, but if you don't pay the piper, you're on the hook for some serious business here. We actually at Ramsey Solutions, we put out articles all the time about topics that are important to you guys. And we recently put out a topic that said, what happens if you don't pay your student loans? Because I know I'm getting up in folks' grill right now, but I know there's a lot of you who have just decided, I'm not going to pay it. That's okay. I'm just not going to pay it. And let me tell you why that's a terrible idea. Number one, we just said, because they're going to keep making them. And number two, it says federal student loans owned by the U.S. Department of Education and federal loan servicers have the power. They have the full power of the government behind them to get this money from you. Of course they do. And they're not going to sleep on that because we need the money, as we've just explained. So if you decide that you're not going to pay your loans, let's walk through a couple of the things that can happen to your butt. Number one, if your loan will become delinquent immediately after you miss a payment. So if you mess around in October and you're like, you know what, I'm not ready, I'm just not going to pay it. You'll be delinquent, and you will be charged a late fee up to 6% of the monthly payment. That's crazy. So add that to the interest, late fees, Terrible. Next thing it says, your loan service will then report your student loan as delinquent. And if that goes on for more than 90 days, of course, they're going to report it to Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. That's your credit report. So now it's going to start to tank your credit score. If you keep letting it go on past that, it goes into default. And this usually happens after about 9 months of missed payments. So you're totally in default, okay? And once your loan gets into default, so once you've gone about 9 months without paying your loan, here's what will happen. Your entire amount, so let's say you owe $80,000, the entire amount becomes due. That's called loan acceleration, and it's a very real thing, and it's a very scary thing. So if you think that you're going to mess around and just willy-nilly like, I'm not going to pay it, they can't make me, you're getting into some really serious water here. If that happens, at this point, you're in default and it's reported again to the credit agencies. But even if you wanted to apply for deferment, forbearance, you can't at that point. You've already proven you can't be trusted. You're no longer eligible for any of the income-driven payment replans, right? Payment repayment plans. So if after, being delinquent for 90 days, finally decide for nine months, you decide, I think I'll do the save plan. No, you can't do it. Or I think I'll jump into one of these IDRs. You can't do it. Okay. You won't be able to apply for any more financial aid, which that's probably the only silver lining here is you can't go further into debt by applying for more student loans if you go this far down the road, which is good. But here's the kicker. It's the federal government, and they can reach their old Winnie the Pooh paw into your honey jar called your bank account, and they can garnish your wages. They can take your Social Security. They can take your tax refund. They can take your passport.
Many people say, no, they can't. No, they can't. How would they get it? Remember when I think it was both the Trump administration and the Biden administration wrote checks for COVID, and they magically appeared in our checking accounts, direct deposit. That means it can come out also. Now, this is talking about garnishing it from your check, that your check's just going to be hundreds and hundreds of dollars lighter.
Yeah.
But I think there's a step past that, y'all. They have proven in the last few years they have the technology to just put stuff in your account, which means they can just take it
out. Yeah. When you wake up and you're like, wait a second, I'm supposed to have $3,000. Why do I only have $200 or $0? And you're looking like Will Smith in The Pursuit of Happiness. The problem is they just went into your account and they took your money because you owed it and you decided not to pay. And so this can get very seriously very quickly. And I hear naysayers in the background, John. Sometimes I can hear the peanut gallery, throwing peanuts at me, even here on the air. And I hear somebody going, but Jade, I'm doing the 12-month on-ramp. I don't have to pay it. I'm doing the 12-month on-ramp. And what that is in a stroke of genius, Biden has said, hey, for 12 months, if you're not ready to pay, you don't have to pay. And we won't report it to the credit card companies. We won't count you as delinquent. And a lot of people are thinking, hip, hip, hooray, that's great. But what will happen is you're still going to be charged interest. And so your balance is going to continue to go up. Guys, you can run, but you can't hide. When you sign your name on the dotted line, you owe the money. And there's nobody coming to save you. Not when the student loan industry is making up 45% of U.S. assets. They ain't going anywhere. You're going to have to pay the debt. And we want to help you pay the debt. We're not saying this to get on to you. We want to help you. There is a way out. That's all I got to say. There's a way out.